This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland in front of the lane, lob to Mobley, pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul!
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cavs winning streak comes to an end in Miami. They went 2-1 since our last recording, which normally feels pretty good for a 3 and 4 day stretch. But with how well the Cavs have been playing this season, little disappointing that they couldn't keep the good times rolling, but they have some time off. They won't play again until Friday. So joining me today to help break down the last 3 games, my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm feeling haggard, brother. 2 nights in a row, we've gone for some holiday-related outings. I went to Zoo Lights last night. I went to downtown Columbus, German Village. They did a nice holiday thing. And 2 nights in a row, my son was miserable the whole time and screamed for an hour and a half. Your boy is feels like he just saw a ghost, you know? Like,
that's fair.
I gotta work my way into Cavs shape. 'Cause I've just been getting my teeth kicked in, brother.
You go from dealing with your children to dealing with the screaming toddler. That is me. So, I'm not going to make life any easier for you. You're going to have to tough it out. And, just like the Cavs had to tough it out with this 3 games in 4 days, in 3 different cities, always a little tougher when you have travel in one of these stretches. But honestly, I want to start things off, obviously, because we're doing post game after the loss to the Heat. So I want to start there. I thought for the most part, it was a pretty good effort from them. I thought in the first half, they came out well defensively and the shooting touch just wasn't there. They looked a step slow to start the game. Kenny Atkinson called a timeout, and I thought they came with a good burst of life after that. Darius got 2 quick buckets as well as a deflection that led to a turnover there. They were able to kind of get out and gain some momentum, and then Evan Mobley rolls his ankle coming off a career best game, stays in the game for about 4 minutes, I'd say, kind of looked a little bit better as he was moving around on it. But I was always curious, once the adrenaline wears off, is he going to be able to continue the game? But I'm not too worried about it. Maybe this is just me being an optimist here because he stayed in the game. But I feel like the Cavs have taken a pretty cautious approach with injuries. So fingers crossed that this is nothing serious for Mobley.
Yeah, obviously, I think there's just a little bit of a damper. I think there's some inherent frustration with, just another ankle, man. These dang ankles are just killing this team right now. And really the only thing that's stopping them from world domination. It did feel like just one of those games where, and it doesn't help. I don't think Jarrett had a good game on either end of the floor, really. I thought the Cavs were, Miami did a nice job of getting the Cavs out of their shell. And then I don't think the Cavs had their best attention to detail game on the offensive glass or on the defensive glass. A lot of looking at 3 Cavs waiting for the ball to bounce to them and a Miami player leaping in to extend the possession. And, when you're missing at your best defender and you're not super sharp on the glass and your second best defender doesn't have a great game, well, that kind of is the recipe for one of those really frustrating second halves where you're just kind of perpetually down 9. And it just felt like, they got it within 5 with like 9 minutes left in the fourth, but it just kind of felt like one of those games that you weren't going to win because they just couldn't string together good process on the defensive end for 3-4 possessions in a row.
Yeah. And I thought even though the defense was strong in the first half, I thought some of the, structural integrity of the defense started to fall apart in the second half. You started losing shooters a little bit more, or when you did rotate, it was a little late. That allowed some backdoor cuts to come into play, which, to some extent is understandable. They are missing some of their better defenders. You're missing your best perimeter defender in Isaac Okoro. He banged knees in the first quarter against Charlotte, and or that was against Denver. I'm getting my games mixed up. Against Denver and missed the Charlotte game, missed this game against Miami. So you're already down your best perimeter defender, and then you lose your best defender in Evan Mobley. That's going to make things a little bit tougher. And, you're missing a very good wing defender in Max Strus. But I thought for the most part...
for what it's worth, you also kind of lose one of your perimeter defenders in Dean Wade because he has to become your de facto backup center.
Yeah, and I saw some people kind of asking what was happening there, so I'm glad that you brought that up because, that's one of the things when the Cavs are lacking some depth when it comes to big men. If they're healthy, it makes sense, right? You have Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. They can eat all the minutes at the 5. Dean Wade kind of slots in as that third big. But when one of them goes out, you basically have to make the decision. Is Dean Wade now our full-time backup 5, or are we going to get Tristan Thompson into this game? Kenny, coming into the second half, started George Niang along with Karis LeVert rather than Dean Wade. So that was pretty much his answer that, all right, we're going with Wade at the 5. And honestly, from a matchup standpoint, it makes sense against Miami too, because they don't really have a lot of size at the center position. Bam Adebayo's same height as Dean Wade. Like, it's something that you can get away with. But I think that's a smart point that, you are missing some perimeter defense there when you're moving Dean Wade out of that lineup.
Yeah, it's one of my, I don't have a ton of gripes with this roster construction, but, whenever you're missing Evan or Jarrett, the team just does feel a lot smaller and a lot less athletic real fast, And I felt like it was one of those games against Miami. Like, did they have enough to win? Absolutely. Or Donovan has a real stinker. 12 points on 16 shots. You're just not going to win if Jarrett also only has 6 points and 7 rebounds in his 29 minutes. So I thought, Darius was really the only one of the core 4 that the Cavs really could rely on tonight. Obviously, it ain't Evan's fault that he rolled his ankle. But when that's the case, and
maybe it is. Actually, let's blame our old friend Kevin Love for having his foot there.
Yeah, how dare he? So it was one of those just kind of frustrating outings, and obviously you get great contributions from the bench. You're not even close in this game if you don't have Niang, LeVert, Jerome, and Merrill all scoring in double figures. But yeah, just in general, I just didn't feel like the decision-making was super strong down the stretch either, Felt like Miami was getting a good shot every possession, and the Cavs had to work real dang hard to get good shots on their end.
Yeah, and, I thought even at the start of the game, I said, Darius doesn't look sharp to begin this one. It took him a little while to get into the game, and one thing I noticed with this game is, there was a discrepancy at the free throw line. I know Chris Fedor has spoken to this a couple times in recent podcasts where he's mentioning, they are getting frustrated with their drive rates and the fact that they're not getting to the free throw line. And I do feel like that's starting to have some impact on the composure. I thought that they've done a good job kind of navigating that dynamic throughout the year. And I understand that there's, a cumulative frustration with that. But I do feel like, there are those possessions where, you're either not getting back on defense or, you're a step slow or you're giving up an offensive rebound because you got shoved out of the way and you felt there should have been a call there. I just feel like, you gotta play through that. It's one of those things where if the Cavs are going to win a championship, in all likelihood, when you're going in a series against the Boston Celtics, which we're anticipating, you're going to be very frustrated with how some of those games go, with the way that Boston really puts pressures on the officials to make calls when it comes to their physical style of play. On both ends of the floor, you're going to be frustrated. Like it's tough to figure out what's going on at full speed. So you have to be able to maintain composure. So, maybe it is just a case of, hey, we've played a bunch of games here. We're a little tired. Some of us don't really have it going, but I thought it is something that's worth highlighting here.
Yeah, I mean, it's I just think it's pretty unlikely that the Cavs especially this version of the Cavs are going to end a playoff series with the national media being like, "Oh, man, they got the better end of the whistle on that one."
I think that's a safe bet.
Like, it's just not, the opposing teams are always going to feel that way. But I mean, I just don't. And I don't think this team is that good at drawing fouls, to be honest, which like you can say there's some biases. You could complain and be frustrated. I do think there is an art to foul drawing, and if there wasn't, then there wouldn't be people that we derided
year after year.
That we derided year after year for being good at that art. I don't think it's something.
And you can't sit here and say, it's a market game when you have someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, is a international player playing in Oklahoma City.
Yep.
Right?
So I just think that's always going to be something where I don't think the Cavs are that good at that. So you're probably not going to be on the winning end of a lot of free throw disparities. So and foul call disparities. So you're going to have to just get good at dealing with it. And I think you're right. I think there were a lot of possessions. I mean, it was like 6 layups in a row where the Cavs were turning to the refs in the fourth quarter, and while Miami was getting back. So I think it's a reasonable pushback. It's just one of those games. It's a frustrating one because it's just they never play well in Miami ever. They're 16-50 or something like that in Miami now.
I feel like the last couple of years have gone better, but overall you're correct.
But yeah, I mean, there's certain markets that just leave a bad taste in your mouth after a loss, and this is one of them. This is not a great Miami team. They are a mediocre or an average team. They're probably going to be around 500 all year. And as such, I think the Cavs could have given maybe a better effort than they ended up giving, but like, this is what a normal NBA season is. And luckily they got one of the best draws of any team in terms of who they got for these extra NBA Cup consolation games, and get to host the Wizards and then go play the Nets. So a bounce back should be incoming.
Yeah, and if there was a time for Evan Mobley and Isaac Okoro to miss some time, this is pretty much the perfect moment. They got 2 games in the next 11 days, so even if you're taking a cautious approach with those guys, they're not going to miss a lot of time, right? Or at least they're not going to miss a lot of games. So this is probably an opportunity to get right. I honestly didn't find this game to be that frustrating. I still have a lot of respect for what Miami can do. You got to kind of tip your cap to Tyler Hero, who had a sensational game after starting out a little cold from the field. They had guys like Drew Smith step up in a big way, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler. Like they have guys that can get it going, and I think the Cavs made it a little easier than it needed to be, particularly in the second half. But, this is why it is so hard when you talk about winning 50, 60 games. It's why it's so hard to do, because sometimes you are playing up against the schedule, and sometimes, you have to have a lot of depth because guys aren't going to have it on given nights. I thought, looking back at these last 3 games, Jarrett Allen against Denver, even though it wasn't an amazing game from a box score standpoint, I thought he played his ass off. Like, I thought he played so damn hard against Jokic. I mean,
he really 8, 15, and 6 is no slouch outcome.
Right. But yeah, you know what? That's a good point, because he did get kind of all those hustle stats. He really did well on the board. He really made Jokic work. Jokic is still going to get his, but he put up 27, 20, and 11. But he had to work for it, and I thought it impacted the overall effectiveness. I thought, you don't win or you don't hold on to a lead that comfortably without Allen working that hard. I thought, but against Miami, I didn't really feel him as much in this game.
Not at all.
Donovan just started off like 1 for 9, just didn't have his shooting touch. And, we praised it on the last podcast of how, in addition to the scoring, he's been doing all these other things, right? He's been attacking the boards at a great rate. Only 1 rebound tonight. There wasn't really kind of that overall impact that we've seen from him, but he's been a lot better recently. Like, ever since the Atlanta game, he's had some better shooting games, better efficient scoring games. It's going to happen. In fact, the funniest part is, you look at the Charlotte game, the starters all showed up. The core 4 won their minutes 52-30, and the rotation guys and the rest of the team just didn't play well. This game, Darius was probably the only kind of core guy that had a solid game, but Niang stepped up, 15 points on 5 of 7. Karras, 13 points on 5 of 7. Ty Jerome probably had the worst out of that group, but it was 11 or 14 points on 11 shots. That's still pretty good. Merrill on 50% shooting, 10 points, right? Like, they all did their part, and the starters didn't necessarily have it. It's hard for me to get too upset, man. Like, these games are going to happen. It's not the end of the world. I certainly don't expect that to, be a regular occurrence for Donovan. And, heading into this stretch where they are going to get some rest and they have an opportunity to get right, I'm looking forward to them getting some practices in. And, after we're done with these 2 games, you have Milwaukee and you have Philadelphia. And hopefully Philadelphia is going to have Embiid, because that goes from, a sure win to, okay, this is a measuring stick game. They're probably pretty good when they have Joel Embiid.
Maybe. We'll see. We're still learning.
Well, you know me, I'm a Philadelphia respecter.
Oh yeah, you definitely are. I think it's just one of those games. I do want to note, I hope Jarrett is doing okay. He's shorted a couple of these rim attacks recently. I don't know if that's just chance or whatever it may be, or if he's dealing with something, but I feel like he's just been a little less explosive,
a little more flat.
Like, even Butler drew a foul. I think it was Butler that drew a foul on him, where he just kind of like checked him, because it's like, like he just wasn't able to move with him the way he normally would. So I would like to see Jarrett. This is a game where they needed Jarrett to be great, and he was, I would say, less than his standard.
Yeah, and in an instance where Evan Mobley is out of the lineup, rolls his ankle, that's kind of where you'd like to see them run some offense through Jarrett. It was something that was so successful last year. It was successful earlier this season, where you are kind of allowing him to have some of that short roll playmaking and stuff that's kind of been, the domain of Evan Mobley this year.
It's a tough matchup because Bam is so good on that end of the floor, but
right. That definitely is part of the equation. I'm just saying, in general, this is a spot where you'd like to see him involved more. And, Bam is going to make those possessions a lot less successful, but it felt like they didn't even try it as often. And, some of that is Jarrett making himself available in those spots. Some of that is the guards finding him. It's, as we talked about on the last podcast, it's an ecosystem, right? And often he's the barometer of how healthy the offense is looking. But it just was one of those spots where I would have liked to see, especially when things aren't really going well offensively, let's go to some bread and butter plays. Let's attack in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Can we pivot and talk about something fun?
I'm down to talk about something fun, and I can only assume that you mean Zoom AI Companion, because it's the most fun thing I can imagine, because only you can do your best work, Carter. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plan. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion.
Well, that was
that's
definitely
what you were talking about.
That
right?
is what I was talking about. But then,
Okay, cool.
But then while you were doing that ad read, I was thinking that maybe we could talk about Evan Mobley, who scored 23 points in the first quarter against Charlotte, scored a career high 41 points, hit 5 threes in a quarter, and went absolutely bananas. Obviously, a little bit gets taken off of that because he left today with an ankle injury, and that adds a degree of angst to all this. But it's one of those games that's kind of tough to podcast about, especially like a couple days later, because you go a little bit Chris Farley show. We go, remember when Evan hit 5 threes in a quarter? Yeah, that was cool. But it was cool, sweet. Justin. It was cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And, honestly, the last few games here, I thought Mobley has been fantastic. I don't think it's any coincidence that when he leaves the game, you're just a little less reliable on both ends of the court. Like, he has been one of the most impactful players on the team, and that's reflected in the on-off splits. I don't know what they are after today, but coming into today, they have like a plus 15 net rating with him on the court and a plus 1 with him off. Like, he is that guy that is kind of that barometer swing. And, we know that he can make an impact on the defensive end of the floor. We have seen him be a more assertive player and attack off the dribble. The handle is so much cleaner this year. I think we're clearly seeing the best version of Evan Mobley. But what we saw those 2 games, the Denver and Charlotte game, is, okay, now he's starting to pull from 3, and he's pulling from 3 confidently. That drifting one he hit in the corner against Denver, like, to steal your quote, that was pretty fun. That was pretty cool. And to see him pull up in transition and take a three and cash it. And, I don't ever want him being someone that takes like 5-6 threes a game, because I think he's so dynamic attacking the basket. But if defenses are going to sag off and they're going to give him those shots, the confidence level to take and make those shots, I think, is pretty exciting.
There is something to it wasn't in the Charlotte game, it was the game prior against the Nuggets, where he was catching and shooting in rhythm and in motion. And there is something, and I think Donovan said that was like his favorite attempt of the night for Evan. And I go back to like kind of thinking about how they have Alex Sarama, who's running the player development for the team. And, a big part of his training is like, replicating game situations and something like that. And to some extent, I was thinking about, Evan, and to a lesser extent, a guy like Isaac Okoro, who's having a career best shooting season, and how so much of their catch and shoot opportunities over the last couple years have been very different from their practice reps. Like their practice reps are, ball gets whipped to them in the pocket and they're immediately rising, into their shooting motion because they're taking a bunch of jumpers. And, they're repping, right? And in game, because they are having to be cognizant about not about the decisions they make and reading the defense, a lot of their 3-point attempts in years past have come where they catch the ball in the corner, beat. All right, I guess they're not going to come out. I got to shoot it. And then they shoot. And I do think like some of those, Donovan drawing attention to the fact that he caught it and was up into his motion so quickly, I did think about how that probably is closer to what he looks like when he's in practice. And I've noticed it with Isaac that he's getting the ball out much quicker from catch to getting into the shot and firing.
I think he hit one against Denver, if I'm not mistaken, where he came curling around from the baseline, caught it and turned and shot like right away. Like he was just straight up with it so quick, and that's just not an attempt that he would ever take before. I think this is a good point to bring up.
Yeah. So I just think there is something to that of like Evan actually taking rhythm jumpers.
Yep.
Might be something that we want to see more of. I don't know if that actually will reflect in the shooting percentage, but it does feel closer to what we actually see in practice.
Yeah.
So like that's my only little musing about why the last two games have felt so good for Evan, more than just because the shots went in.
Yeah, and I think the quicker decision making, so much of the gravity conversation often is, okay, well, what's the shooting percentage? Is there enough volume there? But what really gives kind of the elite players that draw so much attention from defenses, what gives them so much gravity is how quickly they make decisions. Like Steph, you have to get out there as fast as you possibly can, because you know that he can get that shot up right away. He can give the ball up. He can get you kind of into rotation. And if Mobley's at a point where, okay, the ball gets to me, you're too far off and I'm taking this shot right away, whether it's an 18-footer, whether it's a three-pointer, the quicker he forces a defender to make a decision, the higher the likelihood is that he's going to be able to exploit that defender, because he reads the game at such a high level. He is able to make, he's able to drive past a defender that's closing out. And we saw that after he started hitting some of those threes. He's able to make the smart, quick pass. And when you have so many intelligent playmakers around him, if he's taking advantage, getting the defender into a bad position, if he's getting by his defender and getting the defense to rotate and collapse, you're going to get a really, really good look on that possession. So I do think him shooting in rhythm and making those decisions quicker and quicker, that's what's going to change how defenses guard him. Because if he's tentative and the defender kind of has that time to all right, is he going to shoot? Is he not going to shoot? Or not only his man too, but everyone else gets to kind of react to what Evan Mobley is doing. If he doesn't give them that time to react, he's going to become a more dangerous offensive player. And, You look at the game against Denver, 20 points on 7 of 11 shooting, played a lot of his minutes against a very good defender in Aaron Gordon. Like that was an effective game.
Who would be
that
an
was
Achilles heel
aggressive
kind of defender for him in the past.
100%. Like Aaron Gordon looked great. And honestly, like Denver, we talked about it before the game on our podcast, but when they're healthy, that's a better team than their record. Like they've been missing, Jokic was out for the birth of his child. Aaron Gordon missed time. Jamal Murray has missed time. They got a good punch from all of those guys. Jamal Murray played 41 minutes. He had 18 points. Jokic played 38 minutes, 27 points. Michael Porter Jr., 24 points, played 37 minutes. Aaron Gordon played 34 minutes, which is probably more than Michael Malone wanted to play him.
And he only got one free throw attempt against us. That's crazy. Wow.
That is crazy.
I think I had missed that. I knew he had 27 on 26 shots. And I was like, dang, that's a good outcome. Only one free throw attempt. That's crazy. Sorry.
But despite all of those guys playing heavy minutes and all of them having productive nights in the box score, Denver put up a 104.6 offensive rating. Like the Cavs very effectively handled, a very strong performance by the Denver Nuggets. They limited what the other guys were getting done. And you had Evan Mobley attack a great defender in Aaron Gordon and have an efficient night. I think that, we've said it so many times, but the key to this team going to the next level is Evan Mobley being assertive, being aggressive, and kind of asserting his will on the game. I'm just very, very encouraged by what I saw those two games.
Yeah, I mean, it did feel like it continues to feel like I don't like the word leap really with Evan, because it does just feel like a progression of what we've seen year over year over year over year. But the decisiveness has always been the thing that you actually see him limited by. Cursed by too many good options. The fact that we're starting to see him figure out exactly what he needs to do on a possession-to-possession basis, depending on the personnel he's up against. Whether it's burying Peyton Watson on a switch, to the point where I am drawing a foul, and I don't know if you caught that Donovan was like so hyped for him.
Yes.
Drawing that foul, which like those are the little leadership things that you really like with Donovan. I noticed that guy cheers for plays that otherwise seem mundane a lot because someone has done something very specific that he wants to see, which is really, really fun. But I feel like Evan is really crossing that threshold of understanding where to apply himself much more than I just don't know if like the skill itself is actually taken an insane leap as much as just knowing what levers to pull in what situation, and exactly how to apply those skills.
I don't know, Carter. I'd say he's leapt over that threshold. Feels a little leapy to me. Like I don't think leap has to be completely taking leaps from individual skill set standpoint. Like I think back to when Darius kind of put it all together, it was the things that we saw in flashes done more consistently. It was the understanding of the game going to that next level. And I certainly feel like the shooting touch and how consistently he repeats his shooting form and that feels mechanically different. I think that the work that he put in the offseason is showing up. I think the jump shot looks really good. I think, when you start hitting 9 threes in 2 games, that's a little more than, okay, he just kind of got on a hot streak. That's a shooter that's been figuring some stuff out. And,
I'm going to be really mad if he misses a game or two. Because it's like, come on, man. The timing was perfect.
It's almost like when Isaac got hurt after he hit the game winner against Brooklyn halfway through the next game. I just feel like he's putting it all together. And, when he starts putting it all together and he's hitting the shots and he's looking assertive out there, it's the type of thing that makes you get irresponsible. And I was feeling irresponsible after that Charlotte game. I texted you saying, this score is going to win a championship at some point. And Evan Mobley getting to that level makes that a realistic possibility. That's what we want to see. And we still have a lot of time this season for him to continue to grow his game. But it's these are kind of the high watermarks that you want to see. You want to see him reach it more and more consistently. So, if, as I said before, if there was a time for him to miss some time, it'd be now. But, I also understand your sentiment of, God, like I want more of this. Just give me more Evan Mobley reps.
Yeah, but I mean, in the end, it's really good news that they only play 2 games in 11 days. The Max Strus return just feels a little bit closer every day. And then we'll really know what this team has structurally.
What are you thinking in terms of like reintegrating Strus in the lineup? Do you expect him to be playing like 20, 28 minutes right off the bat?
I do.
Or is it going to look a little bit like Dean at the start of the year where he's starting, but, maybe in the low 20s to kind of work him back into the lineup?
I mean, unless his conditioning just isn't there. I don't know. Because, I mean, I just don't think they're going to play him until his ankle is actually in good shape.
Yeah.
And, like, that makes
they've taken a very cautious approach when it comes to these guys. But that's probably why I'm not feeling too anxious with Mobley. Like, if it was really bad, I would assume he wouldn't be staying in the game and playing for 4 or 5 minutes. I'm sure it's seized up a little bit after the fact, but they've been so cautious when it comes to injuries. They don't want to test things out, and I'm just not too worried about it. Sorry, I derailed your Strus takes.
Yeah, I just think I think that with the record where it is, they're not gonna be testing it. So like maybe for a couple games he'll be at like the 22 to 26 minute threshold or something like that. But I think he's going to start the second he's back. I think he's going to help the second he's back, and Kenny is not going to want to. I think Kenny's going to want to play him.
I think to some extent we've kind of underrated what a difference it's going to make. He was so impactful last year. I really think that once Max is back in the lineup, it's going to take this team to another level. And, personally, I am crossing my fingers. I am holding out hope that he's going to be available for those 2 games against Milwaukee and Philly. That's getting more interesting, man. Like the Eastern Conference is starting to trend in a direction where it's like, all right, these teams got off to a slow start, but the Knicks have rounded into form. Milwaukee's rounded into form. And while I understand your skepticism,
even Philly, they're coming up 2 in a row, 5-5 in their last 10.
There you go. Like, I just think that once Joel Embiid is in that lineup, it is going to make them a team that you don't want to play. Like that's going to be a difficult matchup. We thought coming into this season that the Eastern Conference was going to be very difficult, and that was going to push the Cavs to, really take the regular season seriously, to get a high seed, to have home court when it comes to these teams and these matchups. And while it didn't start off that way for the first quarter of the season, I think that these teams are rounding into form, and it's nice to have the cushion that we have, but I'm almost rooting for it because I want to be tested. I want to see these matchups, and I want more games like Denver where you got the best punch from a very good proven team.
Yeah, I mean, and the Boston Boogeyman just isn't going away. I don't think the pressure is going to go down on this team. Honestly, the only thing that would drop that pressure is if Boston were to take the 1 seed in the race comfortably. If the Cavs were to have a bad couple weeks, and then, Boston had a 3-4 game lead on them. That's the only thing that would take the pressure off. It's like Boston's already in the driver's seat and you're just hoping to catch up. But
yeah, that's a good point.
But right now, there's inherent pressure to win because you're in a battle for home court in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
And it matters more for Cleveland than Boston to earn that home court, So I think every game is going to have some underlying pressure, which on one hand, it could be very draining for the team. Could be very tiring, and you have to be careful. Even that 2016 Warriors team, which of course they're going to say these kind of things after they didn't win the championship, but they have said chasing 73 was a drain on them. It was a stressor for them. And I think part of them would rather, I think if they could prioritize other things and have come home with the title, then they probably would have. But I do think there can be that, but also it's just nice to have something to measure yourself against every time you go to, ESPN.NBA/standings. Is like you want to check to see where you are relative to the rest of the league, and relative to your peers at the top of the league. So there is that pressure, and I think they are constantly going to be kind of seeing that shadow hanging behind them in the specter of the Boston Celtics hanging over their shoulder.
Yeah, and getting that win against Boston was so important too, just from a tiebreaker standpoint. You're going to play Boston 2 more times this season. If you split those and it does come down to the tiebreaker, the next tiebreaker is your record in division. So that means that the Cavs have to take care of business against Milwaukee. They have to take care of business against Chicago, Detroit, and Indiana. So far, they haven't lost a game in the division. I think Boston's lost 1, if I'm not mistaken. So like those matchups carry an extra little bit of weight. There's a little extra importance to that. And I do think that it's good that you have Boston, the specter of Boston to kind of play against. I understand, the 73 wins and then they didn't win the title, but like I don't think 73 wins whispered in Draymond's ear and told him to punch LeBron in the junk. Like, I simply would have just not done that. And I don't think anyone on the Cavs team would do that. I certainly don't think we're going to get 70 wins.
No, we're not junk punchers in the end. I don't think that's our brand.
I don't think that's our get down, but I even though we're on pace for it, I don't think we're going to get 70 wins. That would be obscene. I just think that there's too many lulls within the regular season, the wear and tear, guys missing time, and all that is going to occur. But this team is really, really damn good. This is a team that could contend for the franchise record in wins, which thinking back to my favorite season, which was 2009, they got the 66 wins. This team could, in theory, get up to 67. I don't think that's going to be the case, but yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, I was thinking about this yesterday. Is this on track to be your favorite regular season Cavs team ever?
I don't think anything can beat 09 because it was so, that was such...
We were younger, which helps. Being younger is good for enthusiasm.
Being in my formative years was definitely, a big part of that. And, that was LeBron going from best player in the league to, oh my God, this might be the best player of all time. Like that was just so much fun. He was so athletic. That team was so much damn fun that I think the nostalgia of that year is always going to be at the top of the list. But this is probably the most fun I've had since then.
I think it is on pace to be my favorite ever. And I think part of it is that with LeBron, I felt a certain, which is so stupid as a fan to feel this way, but I felt like there was a certain debt owed. Like you owed a certain outcome to LeBron, not to keep him, not because of that, just because like, you have what looks to be like the best player ever or right up there on your roster. And there's a certain like obligation you have towards like getting to the promised land. And like, not that I don't think that they have that level of obligation with this team, but like it is a different kind of pressure. It's more of a collective like set of goals. Like it's not in service of any individual or anything other than just being the best team they can be. And that's not a dig at LeBron or anything. I think teams owe all-time great players certain things. Like the Dallas Mavericks have a certain pressure because they have landed on a generational player in Luka. I do think there is certain pressures that come when you add a generational player to your roster. And the fact that this team is doing it so collectively, it just feels a little different, and like it feels like the highs are just as high without any of the like angst or dread underneath it. Your thoughts? You were
feeling that in 09?
I think I always feel that with it.
You were an angsty, weird kid. No wonder you ended up being on a podcast.
I just think I think every franchise owes something to the best player, and like LeBron was the singular engine of 09. I know we had great players that helped, but he was the singular engine. And so when guys didn't play well, it was very rarely LeBron that didn't play well, on a night where you didn't have it.
I was making these arguments in 2018 when the cupboard was dry.
Yeah.
and things were brutal. I wasn't thinking that way as a kid. You were a weird kid, man.
Well, it's not that I wasn't having fun. I just think there was like there was a different set of pressures associated, I guess is really what I'm saying. I don't
this
feel...
will shock you. My approach was purely being entitled. It's like, yeah, of course my favorite team is doing this. Of course we're going to win. Of course we're going to, go 16-0 in the playoffs. This is all going to work out.
I mean, I definitely felt that degree of invincibility, but it was like it just had a different energy to it, I guess, in the end, for me. And so I think that this season is just kind of pure fun to me. I guess once we get to the, and obviously the postseason is going to change those kind of feelings and things like that. And the stress will certainly kick up soon. But right now, it's just all vibes right now, to the point where I can actually, I don't know. I just feel like this is on track to be my favorite Cavs team ever.
It's definitely going to be up there for me. I will say that I'm starting to feel like a little bit of the pressure. And honestly, like what Evan Mobley is doing is probably what's bringing me there, because it's like, okay, he is taking this leap. The theoretical version of Evan Mobley that we needed to contend is starting to emerge. Now we owe it to this group. Like, we have this group that is committed long term. We've got a few years of run here with this group. Knock on wood that, there's nothing catastrophic that happens, but like, we've got a very good young team, and, we have a generational talent in Evan Mobley. We have an all-NBA talent in Donovan Mitchell. We have Darius Garland, who is stepping up to be in that all-NBA conversation this year. There's pressure that comes with that. I am feeling the pressure, but this is like I guess to your point, it's a fun pressure, because we're still in that stage where no one really believes in the Cavs on that kind of scale for this year. And we're going up against those measuring sticks. We're trying to see, can we get to the level of a Boston Celtics? Can we push? Can we upset them? How do we measure against Denver? That's a team that's just as likely as any team in the Western Conference to come out of the West. So that's why, games like Thursday matter so much. It's an exciting time, but I feel the pressure every time that Evan Mobley looks awesome, because I'm like, all right, this is, we've talked to theoretical team building. We have talked, what needs to happen in order for us to get to this level. Evan Mobley taking the steps forward that he's taking changes the conversation. It changes the pressure. It changes the calculus, and it puts us in a very, very fun place as fans.
Yeah, man. Either way, I just think it's going to be a great year. Continues to be a great year. My dreams of 30-3 at the end of the month were dashed tonight, which it's my fault. I spoke it into, I jinxed us by wishing it aloud. And
I'm just happy you're finally taking accountability for it. I didn't want to call it out, but thank you for volunteering that.
I'm nothing if not accountable, Justin.
The best ability is accountability. Thank you, Carter. Thank you for your service. We will be back later this week trying to get a guest booked in, because we have no damn games until Friday. Big thanks for everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chasedown's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of their review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.